I'm Amanda, and this is Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. I'm so excited about today's guest. We have Wendy Chow. She is an Aussie modern quilter based in New York City. She's the founder of the Weekend Quilter and designs modern quilts and writes quilt patterns to share her passion for quilting and inspire a new generation of quilters. She's the author of Urban Quilting and the Quilted Home Handbook, and she co-hosts the Quilt Buzz podcast. So if you haven't heard of her, go ahead and check her out, and let's welcome Wendy. Well, welcome to the show, Wendy. I'm so happy you joined me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting to be on the other side of the podcast.
I know, I was like, I wonder if she thinks it's weird that I want to interview her, but we're just gonna shoot for the fences. So or swing for the fences. I don't even know what that phrase is. Anyway.
Yeah. we get it.
Yeah. So I know like all this information is already out there, but for the show purposes, let's start at the beginning. So I know on your website it says that you were watching your sister quilting, but like how early did quilting show up in your life, and has it always been present, and what dragged you into it?
Yeah, so quilting, I think my sister brought quilting back home back in 2014. So she was living in Canberra for a little, like a couple of years, and then she moved back home to Perth, which is where we're from. And then she learned how to quilt at a local quilt store on weekends. I guess she was bored. But yeah, so she learned how to quilt, and just watching that whole process unfold, and touching all the pretty fabrics and just seeing people's reactions when they do receive her quilts kind of really sparked that interest. So that's how I got into quilting. I taught myself how to quilt. I learned how to sew at high school home economics class. And yeah, so with those basic skills, that's how I taught myself how to quilt. So there was definitely sort of like a big learning curve at the beginning. Like I didn't know that you had to press when you were piecing. So like when I brought my quilts to the long arm quilter, she was really nice, and she kind of had the word of me afterwards, like, hey, Wendy, you need to trim all your threads and, decide to press it to the dark side or open. You shouldn't really submit a quilt to me without it being pressed. So from there on, I was like, oh, okay, that's great to know.
Right.
But yeah, no, in terms of like quilting in our family, no one prior to my sister and I quilted. So that's okay. Where it really all began.
That's awesome. Well, and I think too, I've been noticing I start following accounts or seeing people pop up, and they're all Aussie quilters, and I just didn't realize, because I think talking to people who live other places, like, I mean, it's pretty popular in Canada too, but like when I talked to Katerina, she's like, yeah, it's not really like that big of a deal in Europe. And when I went to Spain this summer or last summer, the shop owner that we interviewed, it was like in Barcelona, huge city. There was only like, maybe 10 shops like that popped up when we Googled. And so is it a big thing in Australia, or is it recently popular?
I think it's slowly growing. Like when I first started quilting, I didn't know any other quilters except for my long arm quilter and my sister. And there is like the Modern Quilt Guild like back in Perth, and I actually for quite some time when I first started quilting, I thought like I do really want to join, and I do want to be part of this quilting guild, but I was actually really shy. I describe myself as an extroverted person. Like I feel comfortable talking to strangers, but at the same time, like I kind of felt like, I don't know these people. Will it be okay? Like I'm joining this group of strangers.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I definitely noticed that quilting has become bigger and more popular in Australia. And I think with like Instagram and Pinterest, like that's kind of fast tracked it a lot. And especially over, during like the pandemic and everything, like everyone's being stuck at home, people picking up hobbies again, exploring new things. So it's definitely become bigger over there for sure. And it's funny because like you said, like I did discover more Australian quilters living in the US, which is really funny.
Mhm.
So for example, like with Jemima tied with a ribbon, she's actually also from Perth. And I didn't
Oh,
know that there was another Perth quilter or like a Perth, small business, quilting business and designer. And I was like, oh my God, like I wish I connected with you while I was still there.
right.
Yeah.
That
It
would
was
have been
actually,
nice.
yeah, it was actually really nice. I finally got to meet her in person because for quite some time, like Perth was, well, Western Australia, which is the capital. No, let me come again. Perth is the capital city of Western Australia, and during the pandemic, like they had the most strictest sort of COVID restrictions. So they didn't allow people to travel
Mm,
in interstate and intrastate. And if you go back to Western Australia, like you need to be permanently relocating, or you're a West Australian that's planning on moving back permanently. So yeah, like for quite some time it was that sort of COVID restriction. I said to Jemima, like, when I get back to Perth, I am going to see you in person. We did around Christmas time, which was really, really nice.
oh,
Finally meet her in person. And obviously, like when I first moved to the US, like the first 12 months, I couldn't work because I was
mhm,
waiting for my green card and my work permit. So
mm,
it did make things a little trickier in terms of trying to visit friends and family.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, that's so crazy. I I just think it's like I love just like learning about, just how just things work in different places because I mean, I've really only ever lived here where I live and I've traveled a bit, but not a lot. And so I know it's not like some mystery with the internet and how, like you said, Pinterest and Instagram and all these different outlets that we now have. And I think you're right. It definitely did fast track things to the point where it's not regional anymore. It's not, things aren't stuck to one part of the planet or not, or it depends on a person bringing it there, like
Yeah.
back in the
And
old days, I
like
guess.
even like during like the lockdowns and everything, like people were teaching through like Zoom classes. And
Mm,
like it used to be a lot of the time where like you had to either wait for this particular designer or a teacher that would come to your town or your city,
mhm,
or you're going to be traveling there in order to meet them and learn some of the awesome skills that they have to share with you.
right.
So yeah, I think definitely the pandemic, even though like we were stuck at home, it definitely broke down a lot of the barriers that
Yeah.
we had.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it sped up the process of people wanting to consume content as well, because they're like, I gotta do something.
Yes.
And speeding up that desire to learn, because it's like, oh, what do I do? Sit at my house and stare at the wall? Like you can only do so much with what you have. And so I think
Yeah. But that
it
feels like a lifetime ago. As we
I
talk
know,
about this, I was like, holy smokes, like that was
I know,
ages ago.
I know. I know. It's just crazy to think that like 3 years ago we were completely
Yes.
like, things are fine. It'll be fine, right? And then
Yeah.
here we are 3 years
Yeah.
later.
Yeah, I know, right?
Okay, so you started quilting, you said 2015. And then like, how long did it take you to want to write patterns for others? Or, did you just start writing for yourself? And then, like, how
Yeah.
was that process?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit more background about my quilting journey. So, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I started quilting in 2015, and it was kind of really all on and off sort of thing, just for fun. I was quilting for like friends, family, but yeah, no, the weekend quilter didn't really come about till 2017, and it started off in his Instagram account, and like most, quilting accounts start, they a lot of the time people want to have a separate account versus like their personal account. Like I don't think you really want to bombard your friends with like quilting stuff.
Yeah.
um yeah, so like really the Instagram account was to really document my quilting journey and my makes, and it was really my creative outlet. I actually used to work in like a pretty high pressure corporate job in marketing research and consulting, and like the hours were really crap. Like
Yeah.
you know, towards the end, like just part of the work culture was like, you know, working till like the early hours and working on the weekends. It was pretty unhealthy.
Mhm.
So yeah, like the Weekend Quilter like Instagram account was really a platform for me to hold me accountable to live like balanced, more of a balanced life between work and play. Hence the name, the Weekend Quilter. And obviously, like, you know, by constantly, you know, creating, engaging with people, like, you know, if I just suddenly stop, then people will be like, what? Like, why did she stop or something? So that's
Yeah.
why, yeah, that's why, you know, the Weekend Quilter. And it was, yeah, really important for me to continue to, you know, make and create and share on there. And then I moved to New York City. I quit my job actually before I moved to New York City, got married to American. And yeah, that first year I was unemployed. um,
Mhm.
and I couldn't work because I was waiting for my work permit, my green card to be approved. So I really took that time to like, you know, think about my life going forward and reflecting like, do I want to continue working in that corporate life? Um, and so yeah, I just kind of just spent that time like quilting, building the brand for like the Weekend Quilter and just see where that, you know, would take me to. And so yeah, the intention was like to go straight back to the corporate life as soon as I got my work permit. But you know, 3 days after I yeah, 3 days after I got my work permit, I signed, you know, the contract for my first book deal, which is Urban Quilting. So yeah, ever since then, I never really looked back and just followed my dreams to pursue my creative career. Because I kind of like thought like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to work, you know, crazy long hours. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same sort of work culture. If I went back to corporate life here, maybe worse. I don't know.
Yeah.
And like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to balance that plus like, you know, write a book. But yeah, no, back to the original question, like how did I get into writing quilt patterns? So, you know, what really piqued my curiosity to write patterns was when I joined the Sharon Holland and Maureen Cracknell's Social Bee Sampler Quilt Along back in 2017.
Mm.
And yeah, like just watching, like seeing the different techniques and how they broke down like each of the steps in the process, like kind of was like it was interesting. And like I was like really amazed and found out like, you know, there's so many different ways in creating like half square triangles,
Mhm.
flying geese, like that, like it was a really good, you know, sampler, and it was really eye-opening for me. And I was like, oh, like what if I then created my own patterns? Like I'm sure I can do that with just, you know, with some of the basics that I've learned from there.
Mhm.
And yeah, like at the time I was like still fairly new to quilting. I've only made about 3 quilts then. And yeah, like the so then with that, then, well, you know, with those like set of new skills that I had and, you know, reading the patterns and the instructions, you know, at the start of 2018, I started designing I actually started to create my first quilt design.
Mm.
So I was documenting that process on my Instagram account. And if you want to get creepy, you can scroll all the way down to the very bottom and you can see it. And yeah, that is I'm sort of documenting that process pre-quilt, which is a quilting design app.
Mm.
One of the co-founders contacted me and they were interested in converting that design into a quilt pattern and then selling it on their platform. And then receiving that email was, you know, really encouraging, but it was definitely an eye opener. And I didn't, you know, ever really consider or think of like, oh, like I can actually monetize my work, let
Like,
alone write a quilt pattern. So but yeah, at the time when they were like, they contacted me, I was juggling several different things in my life. Like I was working my 9 to 5, or should I say like almost 24/7, 12. And then planning multiple like wedding events and in the process of relocating from Australia to the US. So pattern writing was really put on the back burner. Um, and
yeah.
then until I got to the States, and of course, you know, that 12 months of unemployment, you know, it allowed me to sit down and, you know, break down that step and process and teach myself how to write quilt patterns from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. It's
Yeah.
crazy, like the little opportunities that just like plop in your lap and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, I know. And I also feel like like that 12 months, it was, I don't know, maybe it was like something like in the universe. I don't know, like just planting the seeds.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I guess like, all the stars kind of aligned. I know it sounds like cheesy, but
No,
yeah.
I'm super into that. I think there's just super cool things, that energies that come together for you when you pursue the thing that like lights you up and makes you feel happy and helps you put good into the world. And I just think that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So it all just kind of lined up itself, which is, yeah, really amazing. And it was great. Yeah.
That's so cool. So with the book deal, did you just have like a few patterns out and they were like, hey, can you compile these? Or did you have to write a whole bunch of new patterns?
Yeah, so it was a whole bunch of new patterns. So it was kind of funny because at the time when they approached me, I only had like 5,000 followers on my Instagram account. And I was like, what like, why do you want to work with me? Like, is this a joke? And they emailed me out of the blue. But yeah, no, the whole like sort of theme around, like urban scapes and, sort of the sort of experiences and the lifestyle of living in like an urban or like a big city came about was really just through that first design, and it all just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah.
I think maybe there was just one quilt pattern that I reused or integrated into the quilt book, which is Wind Tunnel, which is really more about, like the wind tunnels in the city. And, I kind of drew from the traditional quilt block of like is it like the pinwheel quilt block? So
Mhm.
yeah.
That's so cool. I I don't know. I think about writing patterns and it makes me want to run for the hills. So people that can write quilt patterns are just like, I still get so fascinated because like I can make something up real quick, but if I had to like write down the instructions and write down all the measurements and make sure all the math was right, I would lose my mind.
I mean, it's not too bad. I think when you write so many patterns, like you can actually reuse a lot of the content. So you're not like completely reinventing the wheel. Like,
Sure.
yes, maybe you would need to like figure out the math, what's the most economical or the quickest way in creating the
Mhm.
design. But I think once you kind of have already written the set of instructions on making maybe 4 half square triangles at a time or no ways flying geese, like you don't need to reinvent the wheel there. Like there's so many ways you can tell someone to fry an egg.
Right.
If that makes sense. Like you
Yeah.
can, like, I think the only thing you really need to change is like perhaps the numbers or just make sure that they all align and everything. But yeah, like other than that, like once you have the wording down, it
Mhm.
should be really quick, like bang. Like
Copy paste, copy
yeah,
paste, copy paste.
pretty much.
So I guess like besides writing your first book, do you have a quilt or a project that was just like the most satisfying? Not maybe not necessarily your favorite, but just the most satisfying thing that you've ever made or done?
Like in general,
Yeah, with quilting, I guess. Like,
yeah, most satisfying. Hmm. That's a tricky one because I've made so many. It's kind of like, who's your favorite child?
right? I know. I
Yeah.
mean,
I would probably say, you know what, the quilt that's over my desk. So it's the Blooming Scraps quilt.
mm,
And that is like in the middle of each of the square or the quilt blocks, I have like a different art gallery fabric, pure solids color.
mm,
So I think that's most satisfying because I had the opportunity to use up a ton of my scraps, which is, most people have a lot of problem like, with like trying to use up the scraps or like coming up with projects that, that utilizes scraps. So that
mm,
was great. And for a long time, like I really wanted to create something like an art, well, not an art piece, but like something to hang on my wall. And I overthink it. Like I know that I can, change it anytime I want to, right? But
yeah,
I think like in my mind, it's like it has to be perfect. And it's like it needs to be the one. So
right.
yeah, like seeing that makes me happy, and it's so inspiring because like it has all the different colors, and I'm like, you know, when I sit at my desk, I'm like, okay, what do I want to make next? Or when I'm designing, I'm like, oh, I could use this color, or how does it actually look like in person? Because it
Mm.
is quite different when you look at like swatches online or digitally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. I love having pieces around that I'm like, oh my gosh, that was really tricky, or just, yeah, that sense of accomplishment with something and then getting to look at it all the time is kind
Yeah.
of fun.
Yeah. I mean, because I feel it's so important. Like, you know, especially as a designer, like you kind of want to create a space where you feel inspired to create, or like, you know, to sit down and design something.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I need that visual like sort of simulation and inspiration to get me going.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely feel that way, like going to my parents' house to work, so we work out of my mom and dad's house. But just like once I'm in that studio, I'm like, oh, I'm so energized. I
Mhm.
want to do all the things. I want to sew all the things. I want to quilt all the things. And
Yes.
so it's just nice to
Yeah.
have that. So that's cool that you were able to create that for yourself with one of your patterns. And it's crazy to me, like, and this is kind of side tangent, but related still. It's crazy to me how differently colors show up online versus in person, because
Mhm.
and so much fabric buying happens online now that it's just so
Yeah.
hard, because you might think you're getting something that it's not the same. And I think they're doing better with making sure that colors represent
Mhm.
what the fabric actually looks like. But yeah, I'm with you. I like having a big selection of colors in person and being able to see, like, what does that look like in certain light, or what does it look like next to other colors? And
Yeah. And I recently enrolled myself into the new school, like the Parsons like design school for like color theory.
mm,
And it was really interesting to learn that, you know, colors, you know, when you put it side by side, they can look quite different as well. So like maybe if it's like, say, you know, like you put like a fluorescent yellow next to like a purple,
mhm,
like purple could look quite different if it was put against something that was green, even though it's the same color purple.
yeah.
So like even like I also like personal experience as well. Like I ordered some Kona cottons, and yeah, like it turned out to be really different in person when I was like placed with something else. And my Kona color swatches, like I haven't cut them up into small bits as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, like getting that package home, and I was like, crap, like I need to reorder this. Like I can't sew with this color.
Yeah, this just isn't
It's
it.
like, this is not
Yeah.
it.
And
Yeah.
that's frustrating too, because then you're like, great, now I have to go on a hunt for something
Yes.
different, and you're not even sure if that's going to work out. It's just like such a
Yeah.
gamble.
And then it's like because I do all my like fabric shopping is all done online as well. So like
Mhm.
it's like great, like I need to pay for postage again. And it's like, damn it, like I need to wait for half a week for this to come.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I really needed that today.
Yeah, it's like, damn.
Yeah. Well, so I was going to ask you, do you shop for fabric in the city, or yeah, but you said you order online.
Yeah,
So
I order it all online. I mean, there is a store in the city actually, but I'm kind of lazy to leave my apartment, even though it's like a 15-minute train ride. But yeah,
and maybe, I think as far as like shopping goes, online is probably more cost effective ultimately, just because you don't have the overhead of having a shop. If you have space to have the fabrics
mm,
in your home, and if you only carry a certain amount of things, like, that's probably a more efficient way for a lot of people to do it too.
yeah,
There's
definitely.
way more online platforms to sell things now too.
Yeah. And you can kind of almost cast a wider net. Like you're not just limited to people that shop with you locally as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like, you know, I'm sure like if someone wanted something really like specific that like, you know, you couldn't find it anywhere else but just your store. I mean, that's pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Like have that little exclusive angle, but Yeah, I think shopping in person is fun and I like the experience, but I think just how things are now, like shopping online has just become so much more convenient, but also, like you said, it casts a wider net. So then you have access to more things that maybe you wouldn't have access to locally. So do you, I mean, do you foresee yourself continuing to write patterns and books and be in quilting for the rest of your working days, or where do you
Yeah.
see your future going in quilting?
It's a great question. Yeah, no, I definitely foresee that for sure. And like part of the reason why, I continue to like pursue this creative pathway is so that, it does make it easier for like our family, when, when the time comes,
Mm.
like when we have
Yeah.
like decide to make our own little babies, human
Yeah.
babies. It just makes it easier. It gives me more flexibility for sure. But in terms of like what else happens beyond that, I mean, it's really dependent. Who knows, we might end up moving back to Australia or Hong Kong, and that would completely change the sort of business, like the overarching business strategy.
Mhm.
That's something that we think about every now and then, but I don't think so like anytime soon, but definitely like would continue like writing patterns. And of course, like if the opportunity to write more books come along, absolutely, I'm in for the ride.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to know because I think sometimes people can just get burnt out and they disappear and you're like, "Where'd you go?"
Yeah, I mean it can be quite scary. I mean, especially like, with, I mean, I guess you are your own boss, but at the same time, like,
Mhm.
the thought of like, when am I going to get money again? How else am I gonna, where's my next revenue stream? Like, of course, like that gets pretty stressful for sure.
Yeah,
And yeah,
definitely.
I can definitely envision that, that feeling of burnt out, because every now and then I do feel like really exhausted, and like being a business owner, like it's so hard to switch off, like,
Mhm.
like even on the weekends, like
Mhm.
even though I am the weekend quilter, and my husband's like, are you sure you're still the weekend quilter? More the weekday quilter? But yeah, like I still, yeah, like I still continue working. Like I
Mhm.
would say like I actually work more hours than my corporate job, but it's something that I enjoy more, and I feel like it's more rewarding for
Yeah.
sure.
It's
Yeah.
your choice. It's not someone else telling you what to do.
Yeah.
And I think there is pressure because I'm the same. I mean, we've got messages coming in from potential clients or current clients, and it's like 9 o'clock on the Saturday night, and I'm answering them. And then I'm like, wait, I need time boundaries,
Yeah.
which is hard because when you're the one that is running your business, then you have to be the one to do everything. But I think, yeah, it's tricky, but you get
Yeah.
to dictate that part too. So,
Yeah. And definitely last year, like going back home to like Hong Kong and Australia, that really forced me to actually take time off. Like I still worked a little bit, but um because we were seeing friends and family, and like it was like back to back, like, like the social events, it's kind of like, okay, well, I just I couldn't work, and I was just too tired, so I was like, okay, screw it, you know what, I'm just gonna park this aside, like whoever needs this is gonna wait.
mhm,
And it's like, how important is it? And that really definitely poses a question, when I was coming from like corporate to, doing this creative thing myself. Like when I was working corporate, like I would reply to someone's email like in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and if I don't, then I'm like, oh my god,
mhm.
um like it's gonna like screw up the timelines. I used to, because I did project managing, so like,
Right.
and it was like multiple jobs at a time, so like it's like
Yeah.
crazy. So
Mhm.
yeah, um yeah, it's definitely, I think, yeah, this has kind of allowed me to sort of, you know work at my own pace, which is much better for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The demands can be a lot, but they're different. And I mean, you get to decide. You can wait. You can
Yeah.
wait for my response and it's
Yeah,
gonna be okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
I do everything in my business, and I just feel like, I do need help, but then I'm also really terrified of letting go, because
Mhm.
you know that you want it done in a certain way.
Mhm.
And I also had that problem as well when I was in corporate as well. It
Yeah.
was really hard for me to let go. And that was one of the things that kept coming back on my reviews, like, you need to delegate more.
You're like, do I really?
Do I want to sick, but I have to fix their work again?
Yeah. Yeah, that was in having a classroom was like that too. I didn't really, parents would want to come volunteer, and there were a few I trusted, and so I'd let them come in, but it was just really rare for me to let other people in
Mhm.
because I'm like, no, I've curated this space to be what I want it to be, and I want things to look and be a certain way, and I want things to flow a certain way, and inserting
Yeah.
another human being with their own ideas is just really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Exactly. Yeah.
but
Mm.
that's, I think there's just so many cool benefits, like you're saying, the flexibility, and you have you'll have that flexibility when you decide to change up your life of, maybe having kids or maybe moving or whatever. But the flexibility is that you get to decide how that works in your life and how it fits, and you're not just like at the mercy of someone else. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like I definitely don't feel like guilty. Like if anything happened, like Truffle, my dog, which is basically like a human child, like there's been a couple of times where she actually got sick. And I'm like, I don't feel guilty about taking a whole day off to just take care of her or take her to the vet, you know? Um,
mhm.
and I just can't imagine what it would be like, as a, working for someone. And then like I've definitely, seen that happen, and like kudos to mums and dads that that work full time and then have like a whole family and
Right. Yeah.
all that. So yeah.
It's tricky for sure. So you have a new book coming out. And so tell us about that. I'm super excited.
So yeah, some really exciting news. I've been working on a new quilting book. It's actually, it doesn't feel new, but it is new because I've been working on it for the last 22, I counted last yesterday, but I've been working on it for 22 months.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, from like signing the dotted line to have book in hand. But yeah, no, so I'm releasing my second book, the Quilted Home Handbook. And that's actually coming out tomorrow. So
Ah,
I'm like really excited and really, really nervous as well. I guess it's kind of like, when you're first releasing a new pattern and then you're really excited, but then you're really nervous about like people's reactions and their feedback. And that's how I'm feeling right now, but like 10 times worse because it's an actual book,
yeah.
because like it's printed, it's not digital where you can like go back and make any changes and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the second book was really inspired by our 18th month home renovation. And for like a
Mm.
good 12 months of that, that 18-month period, we lived in a construction zone. And it didn't help because like for 4 months, like, COVID happened, the lockdown, and
Mhm.
they couldn't do any further work onto, on the renovation. So yeah, we were living out of our bedroom for 12 months.
Yeah.
It was kind of crazy. It was pretty crazy. So like my desk was basically the heart and center of our home. So like I would work there, and actually I was working on my first book at the time.
Oh my
So I'd be
gosh.
like sewing the samples for the first book, writing for the first book, and like what else, like would have dinner, so like I would have to move all my like sewing, would have dinner, would watch TV on a laptop, so we didn't even have a couch.
Oh my gosh.
It was crazy, and then there's like boxes around us for sure, and yeah, it was a crazy time. So like of course like my mind would kind of like go off to this future, like us, like what would our apartment look like when it's all
Mhm.
done? And I really wanted to create a space where like obviously like feel inspired to create and design, but also like we're such homebodies, and like COVID made it like us even more homebodies. And
Mhm.
I really wanted a place of comfort and like just a place to really relax, and I just want to like feel like I want to stay at home all the time.
Mhm.
And because of that, then like typical quilter and designer, where you're like, so what kind of quilting makes, what kind of things I can decorate my home with, like
Right.
things I've made, right? So
Yeah.
that's where it really, like a lot of the projects kind of came from, or
Mm.
like the general idea of the Quilted Home Handbook.
Yeah.
So in addition to like regular, just quilts that you see on your bed or your couch, like this book also has instructions on how to make other items for your home, like, you know, throw cushions, or maybe a sleeping eye mask for like a nap time, or by
Mhm.
your bedside, or maybe like coasters, placemats, and like table runners. And there's a front part, like a new chapter in the beginning of the book, where it takes readers through how to convert some of those projects, you know, like the wall cushions or like the quilts, into like wall hangings as well. So
Okay.
you're not just stuck with just the one thing. So it gives you that flexibility to do whatever with it.
Yeah. Oh, I
And like,
love that.
yeah, and like there's like one particular like throw cushion that's like pretty big. So like you could use it on the floor, like put it on the floor, sit on it. So if you have like a lot of guests over,
Yeah.
you don't have enough room on your couch, like, or you don't have enough chairs, like you could use that to sit on it. And or like you could use that as like your dog can sleep on it, or your cat, whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really want to just give people like that sort of flexibility to be able to create what's suited for their home. And like sort of the instructions are really kind of like a base for them to get started.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sorry, it's like a fire truck. You can't hear anything, right? Okay.
No.
Okay, cool. So yeah, all up there's over 10 patterns if you include, you know, converting them into wall hangings as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
And
so
then
cool.
yeah, it's really cool. And I guess like what's different about this book compared with the first book is the projects look more cohesive. So I felt like I had more time to really think about like, you know, how would they look together if, you know, because you're not gonna buy a book where you could just really create one design, right? You want to
Mhm.
be able to create more than one design. So
Yeah.
and it's, you know, things for your home, so you want to kind of make things look cohesive. So that's, you know, why I took a little bit longer to make sure that, you know, everything looks kind of like the same.
Yeah.
um Also like the color inspirations as well, so I had that in the first book.
Mhm.
And then kind of reflecting on it and looking at it, I was like, oh, everything looks like mishmashy. And like, you know,
Oh,
I only like put those together because I thought they looked cool together. But this time around, I've kind of thought more about like, okay, well, what sort of colors would people use in their home? So I kind of like came up with three main color stories. So the first one is more like neutral colors.
mhm.
So like, you know, and then the second one is more like warm and bright colors, so like more of your yellows, your pinks, like
Mhm.
maybe like a pop of like pickle green from Kona, or like
Yeah.
some like fluorescent yellow, like, you know, acid lime or something. So something a bit fun. And then there's the third color story, which is like dark and moody, which is more of a masculine sort of color palette. So your blues, your browns, your
Okay.
blacks. So I guess it's, you know, a bit of everything for everyone. I don't anticipate that everyone would make it the same, exactly the same as what the book suggests, but it's just something to get people inspired and, you know,
Yeah.
stepping stone, I guess.
Yeah.
What about that?
Yeah. Just like start their creative wheels if they see colors that speak to them or kind of fill their aesthetic niche, then it's like, okay, I can, if I adjust this here or that there, then that would fit my aesthetic. And just giving them a jumping off point, I think is nice.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
cool.
And then in addition to all of that, which is, I guess, where the title like handbook comes from, is like the first half of the book provides tips on styling ideas and how to integrate those quilted touches into your home.
Mhm.
And then step-by-step instructions on how to assemble the quilt from, you know, start to finish. And then different quilting finishes. So like maybe like gridded quilting, or like you can do grid quilting with like diagonal lines, or just something to get people started and going on that perspective. And
Yeah.
then of course how to prepare a quilt to become a wall hanging, and bias binding, because there is one project that requires bias binding, which is
Mm.
the sleeping eye mask, because it has like the curved
Curves.
edges.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's it's a big hefty book. It's like an extra 100 pages
Oh my
to the
gosh.
first book. And we actually, and another like reason why like it took so long for this particular book to come out versus the first book is because I actually wrote a lot and then we had to cut back on a lot of the content. I actually originally had another 3 patterns that were in the book, but
Okay.
we just didn't have enough space. So and of course, like we didn't want to pass, like it was getting pretty hefty, and of course like we didn't want to pass that cost on back onto the reader as well. Like why would they justify paying like X amount of money? So yeah, that's why we had to cut back a lot, and by cutting, we had to rearrange all the pages again, and that took time and
Sure.
etc. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a long one, but well worth it.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I think, well, and I love the concept that like there's styling ideas. It's not just a book of patterns, but it's like it's a style,
Mhm.
like you said, handbook. It's a guidebook on how to aesthetically enhance your home using quilted items. Cause I think it's crazy to me. I mean, I guess not, but just that still, even today, with social media and with the presence of everything everywhere all the time, that people are still stuck in the concept that quilting is, you know, granny calicos, browns and
Yes.
reds, and there definitely is still that. There's definitely is still space for that. And, Lines Kim Deal quilts are like that. And Henry Glass, like that's kind of their specialty, is that niche. But, it doesn't have to be that. And so I love when there's you know, modern aesthetics and modern color palettes, and just like people showing how you could curate your home with these handcrafted items. It doesn't have to always be like old lady cabin.
Yeah. And I feel like it's definitely like a hunger for it for sure. Cause like, you know,
Yeah.
I walk into like West Elm or Crate and Barrel, and like those are the places that I also go and find inspiration from.
Hmm.
And like a lot of the time, like there's just a lot of like bold geometric shapes that can also be like generated by quilting. So like
Yeah.
if I can buy something from there with that, like why can't I make that too?
Right.
Um, with quilting, and give it my own flair, or maybe like mix in some actually quilting techniques, or maybe some traditional quilt blocks that have a modern flair to it, or maybe a modern palette. So
Yeah.
I think that's again like another place of inspiration for the book as well. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
so fun. I'm really looking forward to it. So I can't wait to get
Yeah.
my hands on it, because
Yeah.
I'm just so happy for you. And
Oh,
it's so
thanks.
exciting. And yeah, like you're saying, it's fun to go get inspiration, but like, do you want to spend $100 on a throw pillow, or do you want to make it for like 30 and have your personal style into it instead of coming out of a store that anybody can buy?
Yeah, and it feels more rewarding when you have done it yourself, and like,
Mhm.
if someone comes over and they'll be like, wow, like, did you like this looks really nice? And you can say, like, I made that. And like the ability to say that I made that makes it even more rewarding. And it's just so cool to be able to say that, yes, I did that.
Yes.
And it's awesome
Yes.
because you're able to then, create it in the way that you want it, and
Mhm.
the way that you want to present it, but also like the different colors as well. Because if you
Yeah.
go to West Elm or Crane Barrel, like you don't get to choose those colors yourself.
Right. It's like, I guess I'm stuck with these three, but
Yeah.
I wish this one was different. Well, if you make it yourself, then you can change those things. And coming, coming at my home, my home is a quilted space. I mean, we rent out our master bedroom and bathroom as an Airbnb, and it's the cozy quilt house. Like that's how you can find it
Yeah.
on Airbnb's app. And like there's quilts everywhere. And you
So
know
now I like want to go and stay at your place.
you can come anytime. Seriously, like I tell everybody this. I'm like, if you've been on my show, you can stay at my house for free.
It's like I want to like roll in quilts.
Yeah. I seriously, like, every time I make a new one, I'm like, okay, where is this gonna go now? Because I'm running out of spaces to keep them, but
Do
I keep
you
making
do
them.
you sell your quilts to guests?
No.
You should throwing it out there, but you should totally do that. I'm sure like if guests give like people the option, like if you like this, you can buy this.
Yeah, I've thought about it, but I think so far the quilts I've made and that are in our home are ones that I love deeply.
Yeah,
So I
I
don't think
know. It's so
that I'd
hard
be
to part.
willing. Yeah.
It's so hard to part with it. Like for
Mhm.
the first book, I created, I think, 32 quilts.
Oh my
And I was
gosh.
like, there's no way that I can keep all of this. Like I
No.
want to, but I can't because I live in an apartment. I physically can't. Plus, like I'm gonna be like I'm creating more quilts in the background for like other samples for like collaborations, my own store,
Mhm.
like my own like quilt pattern. So like there's no way that I can keep that.
Yeah.
And it's tricky because you do want to sell it, but then at the same time, like it's hard to sell it because I don't think the majority of people don't justify like you kind of feel like how much do I charge you?
Mhm.
Kind of like charge you an arm and a leg, but at the same time, like I had spent all this time and this money on this, so yeah, like that's why I kind of end up choosing not to sell it unless people reach out and be like, "Hey, are you selling it?" And then I'll tell them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
and nobody's ever asked, so I don't they ask, "Oh, you make these?" Because that's the other thing is they're like, "Wait, you made all these?" And I'm like, "Yes, I
yes.
did."
And
That's
when they
me.
say that, did you make all these? And they do like that knitting
And they're like, "Did
hand
you?"
gesture, and you're like, you quilt?
I'm like, "No,
No.
but I quilt."
Yeah, yeah.
The pushing fabric through a sewing machine is a lot different than knitting or,
Yeah, yeah.
even crochet. It's like, because I
Yeah.
do crochet too, and that's another
Oh
thing. Like,
my
"Oh,
God.
did you knit this?" I'm like, "No, I did not." Be a brat.
Genius. Get it right.
I know. My husband's always like, "What are you knitting?" And I'm like, "Oh, get out of here," because he knows it drives me crazy. But
Yes.
no, nobody's ever asked. So I guess I just had one more question
Yeah.
because it's just been burning a hole in my head since I
Yeah.
thought of it. And so you have the moniker the Weekend Quilter, and we've kind of touched on it here and there, but is that still kind of the vibe you try to hold on to in your pattern writing of just like, hey, these are, simple, casual things you can complete in a weekend, or, is that still something you hold on to?
Yeah, so it was never like with the designs that I create, like it was never really like, oh, it's designed for like to be completed within a weekend.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, like to your question, like I feel like everyone is a weekend quilter, like regardless of, what is the sort of work status, right? Like, whether they're retired or they're like studying part-time, full-time, working full-time or
Yeah.
part-time, or they're a stay-at-home mom or dad, like everyone is a weekend quilter because they'll find time throughout like the week to, to quilt and do something. And personally, yes, okay, like I'm with quilts, operating with quilts like 24/7, but there is still like the element of like, projects for my own personal use, like what I want personally. Like for example, like I want to make a coat jacket. Like I'm
Hmm.
not
Me
working
too.
against any I'm not working against any sort of like time frame for that, so like those projects that are not work related like gets me going, and I still continue to share it on my Instagram because it's still my work, and I do hope that that would inspire people to try it out as well. And quilt jackets are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
so
so cool. Yeah. I just was like, I wonder if this is like, I don't know. I just,
yeah, no, a lot of people do like wonder, like, is this a full-time thing? Because of the name. Um, yes, it is a full-time thing now. When it first started, it wasn't.
yeah.
But yeah, I feel like many people are on that same boat where like they
Yeah.
do have busy lives, and quilting is their creative outlet, and they make the time and effort during the week to create. And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be on a weekend. Your weekend might be on a Tuesday and Wednesday,
Right.
depending on what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I love that though, because you're right. Like it is something that even if it is, yeah, your full-time thing, like I think it's easy to get lost in the day to day, but if you have that little thing that you set aside for yourself to do on the side of that and whatever your weekend looks like, Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
I've
love
been
that.
dabbling more in like garment making lately as well, which is
Mm,
really nice, especially like during the summer. I've been doing that. I didn't really share too much of it, but yeah, like it's been great, and to be able to wear it out, or like you go on vacation, you're like, I've got an outfit, and
yeah.
people say like, oh, that looks nice, and you can say I made it. The same
Yeah.
thing with the quilted touches around your home, I made
Yeah. Yeah,
it.
I made that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I think it's funny because I think so many people, in probably like the 40s and 50s, like they would make a lot of things because they couldn't really afford clothing, and it was almost embarrassing to be like, yeah, I made this, like, or
Mhm.
if somebody asked, did you make that? Then it was like, oh my gosh, did I do tuck a seam wrong, or did I do, it's like almost embarrassing. But now if somebody's like, did you make that? And you're like, yes, I did.
Yeah,
It's more
so
of a point of
cool.
pride. And I think that comes from just how consumerist our society has become,
Mhm.
that now making things on your own has flipped on its head, and now it's like really cool.
Yeah.
So, but I'm here for it. I love it. I grew up in a home of, my mom making stuff all the time, sewing, cooking, whatever it was, like homemade, all the things. And so it's just always been in my blood, really. And so it's fun that this gets to be a space where I can talk about it and
Yeah.
find other people who live that lifestyle too, and want to perpetuate it, because I'm with you. Like, I want to inspire the next generation. I want to get people in. Like, it doesn't have to be hard or scary, and we can make simple things and they're beautiful, and that's great. Just get your foot in the door.
It's a dangerous door to put your foot in, because it just snowballs from there, and you have like a whole closet of fabrics or yarn or whatever.
That's true. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I am so excited for your new book. And I just hope everybody goes and gets a copy, because
Yeah.
that's so exciting for you. And
I know, 22 months in the making.
yeah, right. It's like more than a baby.
Yeah, I was gonna say lots of babies.
Yeah. Could have had like 3 kids by now.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I think that sounds like something that my in-laws, my parents would say.
Right. You're like, no, thank you.
Yeah, no, not yet. And not even three.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was great chatting about it and being able to share it with your listeners.
Yeah. Can't wait to see people's projects that they make from your book. And so
Yes.
I'll be
Yes.
following hashtags and whatnot, because I
Yeah.
love seeing what other people make.
Yes, and you can follow the official book hashtag for like inspiration and just works by other people. It's called hashtag Quilted Home Handbook. Or
Perfect.
you could also check out hashtag Urban Quilting Book for inspirations and other like different color palettes that people come up with from that first book as well.
Perfect. Okay. We'll put those in the show description below so people can follow those. And other than your Instagram, where else can people find you online?
You can find me at the.weekend quilter on Pinterest and on Facebook as well. And that's it. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll put those down there and make sure people follow you. But otherwise, the Quilted Home Handbook comes out January 24th. So go get yourself a copy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.